By midnight, the woods of western Maine were drowning beneath a cold October storm. Wind hissed through the pines surrounding the tiny cemetery of St. Bartholomew's, a forgotten burial ground abandoned sometime in the 1940s. Moss-covered stones leaned at crooked angles, and black water pooled between graves that nobody had visited in decades. Simon Pike loved places like this. Simon was mostly an introvert and kept to himself, but he always dreamed of getting married one day. But who would actually agree with how he makes a living? He spent 10 years robbing graves. Not for jewelry or watches, those belonged to movies. Simon supplied collectors who paid obscene amounts for bones, antique coffins, and anything unusual buried with the dead. Medical oddities, Civil War relics, Victorian funeral masks. There were buyers for everything. And tonight, he had come for something special. 3 weeks earlier, he'd purchased a faded church ledger from an estate sale in Portland. Inside was a handwritten note dated 1912. Bury her deep. Don't remove the veil. God forgive us. Attached to the page was a name. Margaret Bellamy, age 48. Simon had smelled money immediately. According to local gossip, Margaret Bellamy had died under strange circumstances. Some said she was a medium. Others claimed she murdered children. Some even said she would stalk young men. But one detail appeared over and over in old newspaper clippings. She had been buried wearing an expensive silver funeral veil, decorated with hand-carved angel faces. Collectors would pay a fortune. So here he was, shovel in hand, rain dripping from the end of his nose. He found the stone half hidden beneath vines. Margaret Bellamy, 1864 to 1912. Beloved wife. Simon laughed.
Beloved enough to bury with silver.
He thought it was odd not seeing anything in the ledger or the papers about her being married. Thunder growled overhead. He dug. The soil was wet and heavy, but after an hour he hit wood. His pulse quickened. The coffin was intact. He climbed down and brushed mud away. He pried the coffin open. The smell hit him at first. Not decay, not rot. Fresh earth. Something caught his eye. Scratches. Thousands of scratches. Deep gouges covered the lid. Simon frowned. Animals? But they were on the inside. He paused, then laughed nervously.
People used to be terrified of being buried alive.
The body inside looked impossible. Margaret Bellamy lay perfectly preserved. Black dress, long blonde hair, hands folded neatly, and over her face rested a silver veil engraved with tiny angels. Simon stared. Over 100 years. Impossible. He almost climbed out and left. Almost. Instead, greed won. He reached down and lifted the veil. The angels glimmered in his flashlight. Beautiful, he whispered. Then he froze. Margaret's eyes were open, cloudy blue, staring straight up. Simon stumbled backward. His heart hammered. The eyes had to have shifted. Bodies moved. Science, gas. He'd seen strange things before. He laughed shakily.
Dead's dead.
He climbed out, veil in hand, and buried the coffin again. By dawn, he was driving home with $70,000 hanging from the rearview mirror. He lived alone in a cabin outside Rumford. The silver veil sat on his kitchen table. Something about the angels bothered him. Their faces. They weren't smiling. They looked terrified. Simon poured himself whiskey and ignored the feeling crawling up his spine. At 2 a.m, he heard 3 knocks. 3 slow taps. Simon checked the door. Nobody. Wind? He went back to bed. Then 3 more knocks. this time louder. He opened the door. Nothing. Rain, trees, darkness. Then he noticed mud. Fresh muddy footprints, bare feet, leading into the house. Simon stood frozen. The prints vanished near the kitchen table, where the veil sat. He grabbed his shotgun.
Who's there?
Silence. Then 3 more knocks. Not the front door, behind him. The bedroom door. He spun around. The door slowly creaked open. Nothing inside, just darkness, and the smell of wet soil. He left every light on until morning. The next day he called his buyer. No answer. By evening, every collector he contacted had vanished. Phones disconnected, emails deleted. It was as though they never existed. Then strange things began appearing. Mud in the bathtub, wet footprints on the ceiling, whispers inside the walls, and always 3 knocks, 3 slow knocks. No matter where, he hid the veil. Closet, basement, attic. It always returned to the kitchen table. Waiting. After 6 days without sleep, Simon drove back to St. Bartholomew's. He intended to put it back. Rain fell again, the same storm, the same wind. He found Margaret's grave and stopped. The earth had already been disturbed, fresh. Someone else had dug there. Simon climbed down with his flashlight. The coffin stood open, empty. His breath caught. No body, no bones, nothing. Only a single sheet of paper, brand new, dry. His trembling fingers unfolded it. Written in black ink were 5 words. "Thank you for freeing me." Simon screamed and climbed out. Something stood beside the grave. Margaret. Still beautiful, still wearing the black dress, her eyes pale and empty. Water dripped from her hair. She smiled, not cruelly, sadly, almost lovingly. Then she dissolved into darkness. Simon ran. He abandoned his truck, abandoned his home. Nobody saw him for 7 years. People assumed he was dead. Then one winter morning, hikers found a shack deep in the Maine woods. Inside they discovered a man, starving, white-haired, blind, barely alive. Simon Pike. The police questioned him for hours. All he would say was, "She's coming." Doctors blamed madness, dementia, isolation. But every night, nurses heard him talking to someone in his room. They never saw anyone, just Simon whispering, "I'm sorry. Please. Leave me alone. I did that yesterday." Then one February evening, a nurse entered his room and found his bed empty. The window was locked. The door had never opened. Simon was simply gone. On his pillow lay the silver veil, and beneath it a fresh death certificate, issued in 2024. The nurse assumed it was some kind of joke, until she read the name. Not Margaret Bellamy. The certificate belonged to a man declared dead on October 14th, 2024. Cause of death, buried alive. Name, Simon Pike. Age, 27. And written beneath the doctor's signature in faded ink were 6 words that made the nurse drop the paper and run screaming from the room. Beloved husband of Margaret Bellamy. See, Simon robbed graves, and Margaret was robbing the cradle, even beyond death. Looks like Simon got married after all.